Tonight on Primetime, 740 days ago, Keir Starmer became Britain's Prime Minister, promising to bring economic stability. Today, he faced his final grilling by MPs following his resignation. Britain on the brink then of its Andy Burnham era. A very good evening. Well, we begin tonight's show in the UK, where Keir Starmer delivered an emotional final PMQs and chaired his last cabinet meeting as British Prime Minister. Britain, of course, prepares now for Andy Burnham to take over as Prime Minister. A News's UK correspondent, Ollie Barrett, reports.
For the Cabinet and for the House of Commons, these were really the big goodbyes. Keir Starmer hasn't actually left the role of Labour leader or Prime Minister yet, but it's his final Cabinet meeting. And during that Cabinet meeting, he was presented with a carriage clock by his Cabinet ministers as a goodbye present. We're told it was an emotional meeting, although Keir Starmer will know that some of those around his Cabinet table played a role in his downfall. So perhaps mixed emotions there. Also emotional during Prime Minister's questions, particularly when Keir Starmer was talking about some of those people that he feels his government have helped since he has been Prime Minister. He also got very emotional talking about his support for Ukraine and Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, particularly after Volodymyr Zelensky was, in Keir Starmer's words, attacked in the White House and then was welcomed to Britain the following day to a rather different reception. Kemi Badenoch expressed her admiration for the Prime Minister, the leader of the opposition, talking in quite glowing terms about Keir Starmer during their final back and forth across the dispatch box in PMQs. As I say, he's not yet out of a job, but that will come very soon. On Friday, we expect the announcement that Andy Burnham, the MP for Makerfield and former Greater Manchester Mayor, will be announced as the new Labour leader. And then on Monday, Andy Burnham will take over as Prime Minister. There were various mentions in PMQs of what some opposition politicians see as a lack of scrutiny for Andy Burnham because Parliament will be on recess when he becomes Prime Minister. And also some critics say Andy Burnham hasn't yet set out a clear policy agenda and therefore has a lack of mandate when he takes over the role. Keir Starmer, during Prime Minister's questions, insisting that he would give his wholehearted support to his successor, would only give him advice in private if it was asked for, and wouldn't be setting out that advice to his successor in public. As I say, an emotional day for Keir Starmer ahead of leaving the job. Keir Starmer described this at the end of PMQs as the end of his political journey. Andy Burnham, when he becomes Prime Minister, knows that he faces a long and difficult to-do list of challenges that the UK currently faces. Ollie Barrett in London for A News.
Well, joining me now from the UK to discuss Keir Starmer's term, including his final appearance today, is the political broadcaster Andy Preston. Andy, great to see you. Always good to have you on the show. As Ollie said there, I mean, an emotional day. I mean, there were some poignant exchanges, weren't there, between the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition. I was sort of almost minded of Tony Blair, David Cameron leaving office, even the famous note from Blair to Alan Clark saying, "Come back and give me hell." There was a sort of honour about things, which was quite nice to see. What was your reflections on the performance?
There was honour and there was a conviviality which was good to see, and it's a very tense time actually, obviously, in UK politics with the death, the apparent murder of well-known politician Anne Widdecombe, and this follows actually after the murder of a couple of other politicians in the last 10 years or so. So there is quite a scrutiny and a fear at the moment about politicians being overly hostile to each other. So Kemi Badenoch probably got this about right, where she challenged the PM gently, but was very respectful, made him feel good. I think that the inescapable fact, and all of your viewers, is that Keir Starmer has been sacked by his own party. His own party have sacked him because he was just too unpopular. The public don't like him. He is the most unpopular Prime Minister that Britain has ever had since records began. And so his parting was always going to be somewhat, I'm afraid to use the word pathetic, because the word pathetic relates to pathos and inspires pity, but it was handled quite well, and it was an emotional day, and everybody behaved themselves and acted with some respect.
Yeah, as you say, the figures, his unpopularity, is the sort of the very low popularity figures are just inescapable, aren't they, for everybody, including people in his own party. I mean, what did today's exchanges, do you think, reveal about Keir Starmer's sort of biggest political vulnerabilities?
I think the thing that comes back is the same thing, is that he entered office with a whopping great majority based on our voting system, but not a significant ringing endorsement from the public. I think the Labour Party achieved 34% of the votes cast, but managed somehow to fluke into a huge number of seats and control the ability to pass any law they would wish for. The problem was he came to office without a plan. And from day one, that caused him and the country, and therefore the whole Labour Party, all of his colleagues, a great deal of strife. It's caused all of his politicians, especially those on the backbenches, to fear for their own jobs as and when the next general election comes. So I think that the tone has been difficult from the start. He's been I'm afraid to say, I'm going to be blunt, he's been a hapless, unsuccessful figure from day one, despite the fact he won an election. But of course, critics will say, probably correctly, that he didn't really win an election. The Conservative Party was appalling at the end of its tenure, its 14-year tenure, sorry, and they lost the election, handing it to the Labour Party.
Now, Andy, many will remember his first PMQs back in 2014 when, amongst other things, he waxed lyrical about inheriting 14 years of mess. I mean, is he leaving a mess for Andy Burnham, do you think?
I think he is leaving a mess. It is undoubtedly the case, Guy, that he took over in a very difficult time. He took over at a time that tax rises were pretty much inevitable, whoever won, and some kind of cuts by the government were inevitable too. What Starmer's been unable to do, and has made things worse, is make any cuts. The cuts that he's tried to make, his own party haven't let him do that. So we're in a situation where actually government debt has increased from an already record, peacetime record level, to new record levels, and the cost of that debt has gone up, not just in absolute terms, the cost of servicing it, the interest rate, it has gone up in relation to other countries, our peer groups across Europe and across the Atlantic. So Keir Starmer has left a situation where the existing problems are there and have got worse. Unemployment has risen, and the cost of maintaining our mountain of debt, £3 trillion of debt, has gone up. So things aren't in good shape. Andy Burnham is taking over very much a poison chalice. He's a popular guy at this point. Let's see how he does.
Yeah, I mean, in opposition, the Prime Minister criticised others, didn't he? Johnson, Truss, Sunak, on issues that, arguably have come back to haunt him too. The cost of living crisis could be one of those. What is the Starmer legacy on those big domestic issues? And has he got anything right, Andy?
I mean, I think what he will see as his legacy, Guy, he will see himself as the man who rebuilt Labour after Jeremy Corbyn. Many people in Labour do agree with him. I don't know if the public do, and I think if I was to look at the polls as a measure of whether he managed to rebuild Labour, they currently stand at about 19 or 20% in the polls. Well, Jeremy Corbyn, from whom Keir Starmer took over, and supposedly rebuilt the Labour Party after Corbyn, the Labour Party was at much higher levels than that when Corbyn was in power. So it's very hard to see that he really did rebuild Labour. He won an election, but critics of his would say that he, rather than winning it, the Conservatives handed it to him. He would also claim that he stabilised Britain with a sense of moral purpose after an undoubtedly chaotic Conservative government in the last 3 or 4 years of its of its time. But I think that from day one, the chaos continued. There were scandals from day one about expenses, about things that were being given as gifts. We found out that a businessman with some political power had been buying Keir Starmer's suits, his glasses, buying out a dress for Keir Starmer's wife. And not only that, but this was going on across the Labour Party. I don't want to sound like I'm just bashing Labour here, Guy, but the point I'm making is that all the accusations of chaos, of cronyism, of sleaze that Keir Starmer seized on when he was the leader of the opposition carried on in abundance as soon as he took off. And I think the last thing, so he didn't stabilise British politics in or clean it up in any way. That was his one big promise, to clean it up. He didn't. And I think the last thing he would say he's done is that he's rebuilt public services. It's certainly debatable, and it's certainly the case that waiting lists in the NHS are lower. People go back and forth on that and say they're artificially low because of new ways of counting. But Look, Keir Starmer is not leaving in a good spot. He's the most unpopular Prime Minister ever. Unemployment is up, our debt is up, the cost of servicing that debt is up. Nobody in the country is happy at the moment, and Andy Burnham is taking over a really tough gig.
Yeah, you mentioned your namesake there, Andy Burnham. He's Britain's Burnham era, whether you like him or not. Whether you know much about him or not, it will start on Monday. Just give us a sense, give our viewers a sense of the process, because he has to go and see the King, obviously, before he goes to number 10. Give us a sense of the process, and also what your expectations are in terms of Andy's to-do list. What is he going to tackle first, do you think?
Good questions, and nobody really knows what Andy's to-do list is, because he's talked in such general terms until this point. But Keir Starmer basically has to go and formally offer the monarch, the King Charles, his resignation, and King Charles will accept, and then Andy Burnham will visit King Charles and be asked to form a government and do so. That's really a formality. What is going to happen is that Andy Burnham takes over from Keir Starmer on Monday. The question is, what is he going to do? Is front of everyone's mind. Andy Burnham he's a likeable guy. There's something about Burnham that people like at this point. He's certainly more popular now than Starmer was before Starmer became PM. So he's starting at an advantage. But it isn't clear what he wants to do other than be nice. He talks in very general terms. He's had a career in national politics before. He stood to be leader of the Labour Party twice before. Third time lucky he made it. I think he's deemed to be a nice guy, a decent guy, down to earth, hardworking and bright. He's a regular kid who ended up going to Cambridge University. So he's a bright kid. He loves his football. He loves his music. But for the last 10 or so years, he's had a plum job. He's had a very high profile job, one of the biggest jobs in the UK in terms of profile, without any real significant responsibility. He's been the mayor of Greater Manchester, which means that he's a metro mayor, and what they do, guys, they hand out money. They hand out money to create infrastructure, they hand out money to create jobs and subsidise investment for a region. It's a job where there's very little effective scrutiny and there are very big budgets to make positive things happen. Some people call them Father Christmas type figures because they're always giving gifts. Now, being the leader of the country, being in charge of government at a time when there are going to have to be cuts and or tax rises, is completely different. And he is scurrying around now. Guy, he's trying to work out what to say, what his policy should be. He has not suggested any real policies at this point. And so he's in the same situation as Keir Starmer, ending up in power without a firm plan from what anyone can see. I don't think he'll ever be as unpopular as Keir Starmer was. He's too likeable and down to earth, and he is a good communicator. But he's going to have an uphill struggle, and it's hard to see how he wins the public over in an era of cuts and tax rises.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting couple of years until the election for sure. Andy, always a pleasure to speak to you. Thank you so much for your analysis. Okay, coming up, we'll take a closer look at the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo, as new reports suggest the virus is spreading from unknown chains of transmission. Don't go away.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
Welcome back wherever you're watching Primetime. Good to have you with us this evening. Well, health authorities in the Democratic Republic of Congo say confirmed cases of Ebola have topped the 2,000 mark in the country. Well, the outbreak is spreading to new areas. Chris Okamringa reports now from Kinshasa.
The Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo has spread to 2 new areas in the northeast of the country, bringing to 5 the number of provinces that have recorded cases. Authorities recently confirmed cases in the provinces of Otuele and Chopo, raising fears of a wider geographical spread. The World Health Organization has called for intensified surveillance, warning that the outbreak is spreading faster than health workers can track it. The global body's Assistant Director General of Health, Chikwe Yekweazu, made the revelation after visiting the epicenter of the outbreak in Ituri province. He said 80% of new Ebola cases are emerging from unknown chains of transmission. That is happening despite health workers stepping up contact tracing for Ebola patients. The fight against Ebola was recently disrupted by a strike among some health workers over unpaid salaries and allowances. The DRC government has promised to resolve the problem. The Ebola outbreak circulating in the DRC is driven by the rare Bundibujo strain, for which there is no approved vaccine or specific treatment yet. Scientists are currently conducting clinical trials for 2 potential drugs that could stop patient deaths. The response to the outbreak has been hampered by mistrust from some community members who do not believe Ebola exists, and by insecurity in the mineral-rich regions of the northeast and eastern parts of the DRC. Rebel groups in Ituri, North Kivu and South Kivu provinces make it very challenging for health workers to curb the spread of Ebola. The Africa Center for Disease Control and Prevention has appealed to donors for more funding to contain the fast-spreading disease. Chris Ochamringa for A News in Kinshasa.
Well, joining me now to discuss the situation in the DRC is Jonathan Ofayansa, who is a publisher of Africa Briefing magazine in the UK. Mr. Ofayansa, thank you very much indeed for joining us on Primetime tonight. New infections then coming from unknown chains of transmission. I mean, how concerning is that?
Well, the greatest danger is that surveillance, may now be running behind, the virus. And when most new patients cannot be linked to a known case, it means that infections are occurring outside the contact tracing system. And people may be treated at home, move between communities, or visit several health facilities before the virus is recognized. And this creates opportunities for household transmission, unsafe burials, and infections among health workers. And it also means that the official figures may describe only part of the outbreak. The outpouring of the priority, therefore, must be active community surveillance, faster laboratory testing, and rebuilding trust so that people report symptoms early rather than hiding the illness. So in simple terms, unknown transmission chains mean that the authorities are no longer seeing every pathway along which the virus is spreading. And WHO officials have also warned that the true caseload could be several times higher than reported.
Now, viewers will have been seeing pictures of the Africa CDC there whilst you were talking. They, of course, are appealing for more international funding. Is the global response keeping pace, do you think, with the scale of the outbreak?
No, I wouldn't say so. The funding currently available doesn't appear proportionate to either the speed or complexity of the outbreak. And although WHO has reportedly received only about 40% of the $115 million it says it requires for its response. And that figure also actually relates to WHO's needs and does not necessarily represent the full costs facing governments and other humanitarian organizations. And money is also needed not only for treatment centers, but also for laboratories, protective equipment, contact tracing, safe burials, community engagement, staff payments, and operations in areas affected by the conflict. Therefore, the delayed funding is especially damaging because outbreak control is time sensitive. And every transmission chain that is stopped today prevents additional cases, deaths, and expenditure tomorrow. So international partners should therefore treat funding as an immediate containment investment rather than waiting until the outbreak becomes more expensive and geographically dispersed.
Yeah, it's a very good point. I mean, do you think part of the problem is the way in which the international community is thinking about this crisis, is almost categorizing it? Because, of course, we've now seen spreading of the virus to new provinces. At what point does this become a major global concern rather than just people describing this as a crisis only for the DRC?
Well, legally, institutionally, it already is a global concern. WHO declared the outbreak a public health emergency of international concern, way back, on May 17th, 2026, after infections were detected in both the DRC and Uganda. And also Africa CDC, also subsequently declared a continental public health emergency. However, this doesn't mean sustained transmission is occurring worldwide. The more serious threshold would be repeated exportation into additional countries, unidentified community transmission outside the original outbreak area, or cases reaching major transport hubs without being rapidly isolated. In fact, a confirmed case has already been detected in France in a doctor returning from the DRC, demonstrating the possibility of international exportation. And just I think yesterday, a U.S. national also got infected in the DRC, and the U.S. government has prevented him from entering the United States. So the crucial test is whether imported cases generate secondary transmission. Strong surveillance and infection control can prevent an imported case from becoming a new global outbreak.
Yeah, it's a very good point. I mean, over the next few weeks, if the spread does continue, what are the biggest risks, do you think, and what are the things that the authorities need to get right in these next few weeks?
Well, well, do you mean the Congolese authorities or global, health authorities?
Yeah, within the DRC, I think, but also I think more widely, because of course, as you rightly now say, the WHO, there are 2 other countries you mentioned there. Collectively, what do we need to be doing? What do we need to get right together to make sure that these next few weeks are as successful as possible to mitigate this spread?
Well, the global authorities, I mean, when I say global, I'm talking about Europe, America, maybe Asia, as well as so forth, must not wait, for this infection to get outside of the DRC. Like I mentioned earlier, one doctor, who returned from DRC was found to be infected in France. Okay, and this American, national in the DRC has also been prevented from entering the US. Okay, look, chances are if the world, the Western powers do not take preventive, measures, right, it could slip out into maybe the UK, Europe, other places in Europe, America itself, and before you realize, it will become a truly global emergency. So the funding required needs to be provided, right? There's no use pledging, right, and not making good those pledges, right? The WHO, the Africa CDC should be given the necessary funding and the necessary equipment, all the necessary backing to make sure that the virus is contained, in the areas where the outbreak is, so that it does not, go beyond, DRC's borders. So that's to me, that we must regard it as an immediate emergency and shouldn't wait for it to escalate into a global one.
We shouldn't wait. Wise words indeed. Mr. Ofayansa, we thank you very much indeed for your analysis and for joining us on Primetime tonight. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, after the break, we'll check in with our correspondents around the globe. Do stay with us. Welcome to A News, unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent.
Hello, I'm Jay. That challenges.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories.
Welcome to Gabala. One important note. To Fierce. I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Hello, we are recording the shade of November.
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kiev, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent,
Almaty, Kazakhstan,
Port Sudan, Tehran, Islamabad, Istanbul,
Kabul, for A News.
Welcome back. You're watching Primetime. Good to have you with us tonight. Iran's Revolutionary Guards say they have targeted several American military sites. In the latest attacks, Iranian officials have warned there will be no compromise over the Strait of Hormuz. Torres Shirililo reports now from Tehran.
Iran's Revolutionary Guards said it targeted U.S. military facilities at the Al-Azraq base in Jordan and pounded an American logistics center in Kuwait, as well as the United States 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain, late on Tuesday and early Wednesday. According to the Sepah News website covering the force's statements, the attacks were a continuation of Iran's reprisal operations against the U.S. military campaign on Iran. The attacks follow Washington's threats of withdrawing from the ceasefire deal with Tehran that was signed in June. Meantime, President Masoud Pezeshkian said that Iran will defend every inch of its territory after U.S. President Donald Trump retweeted his earlier post suggesting occupation of the Iranian islands in the Persian Gulf. The state-owned IRNA news agency quoted him as saying that Trump's renewed threats on bombing Iran's energy infrastructure, as well as his remarks against the Iranian nation, reflect the U.S. chief executive's hatred of Iranians. Also, Army spokesman Brigadier General Mohammad Akraminia said that the Iranian armed forces would not make the slightest compromise over the Strait of Hormuz. The general stressed that the only way for the United States to reopen the strategic waterway is to respect the rights of the Iranian nation and to comply with the terms of the Iran-US Memorandum of Understanding to end the war. In New York, Iran's ambassador and permanent representative to the United Nations rejected claims made by the American ambassador Tammy Bruce that Tehran is supporting the Houthis in Yemen. Calling the accusations baseless, Amir Saeed Iravani said that America is an aggressor, not a victim. In a letter to the UN Secretary General and the President of the Security Council, the Iranian diplomat added that the U.S. representative at the meeting on the situation in the Middle East abused the platform of the Security Council to spread false information and make a series of baseless and politically motivated claims against Iran. In another related development, Iran's foreign ministry slammed UK labeling of the Revolutionary Guards as a security threat, describing the designation an unjustified and irresponsible measure. Turaj Shiralilu from Tehran for A News.
Fresh allegations of unlawful killings and abuse by British troops in Afghanistan have been presented to a public inquiry investigating alleged war crimes. Tamim Bahis reports now from Kabul.
British media reports say 2 witnesses gave evidence behind closed doors to the Afghanistan inquiry. Both reportedly told the UK inquiry they regretted making these disclosures only now. Among the allegations is a claim that British troops mistreated Afghan detainees by throwing them from forklifts onto the ground for amusement. One witness described the alleged killing of 3 brothers said to be farmer from a village called Rahim. He did not identify the province where the incident allegedly took place. According to his testimony, the men were killed by British forces and their family later received more than £3,600 in compensation. These claims have not yet been tested publicly, and the closed-door nature of the testimony means important details remain unavailable. The evidence could be significant to the Afghanistan inquiry, which is examining alleged unlawful killings by British special forces and possible failures to investigate or disclose them during operations between 2010 and 2013. For Afghan families, the central question is whether the inquiry will establish individual responsibility and deliver accountability more than a decade after the alleged incidents. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
An intense heat wave continues to grip Kazakhstan, with temperatures remaining exceptionally high across much of the country. Well, as the hot weather persists, authorities are warning of growing risks to public health and an increased danger of wildfires. Our correspondent Fariza Kalamazina reports from Almaty.
Kazakhstan is facing an extreme heat wave. Temperatures in the south of the country have reached 45 degrees Celsius, with heat warnings issued almost every day. Here in Almaty, temperatures are expected to stay close to 40 degrees through the end of the week. City workers are spraying water on streets, playgrounds and other public spaces in an effort to cool the city. The extreme heat is also putting pressure on emergency services. In the first 2 weeks of July alone, Almaty's ambulance service responded to more than 33,500 emergency calls. Doctors say they are treating more patients with high blood pressure, heart attacks and strokes.
This puts a heavy strain not only on patients and the public, but also on ambulance crews. Working in extreme heat is extremely demanding for our teams. ++00:03:45. We see many people suffering from heat stroke, losing consciousness, and many patients experiencing dangerously high blood pressure.
Meanwhile, Kazgidromet says the prolonged heat is posing a serious challenge for farmers. 17 of the country's 20 regions are also facing a high risk of wildfires this month. The current heat wave also reflects a longer-term climate trend. Since 1976, Kazakhstan's average annual temperature has increased by about 0.4 degrees Celsius every 10 years, faster than the global average. Last year was officially the warmest on record, and this year has already surpassed the previous temperature record set in 1992. The heat is expected to continue across much of Kazakhstan in the coming days. Doctors are urging people to take the extreme temperatures seriously and avoid spending long periods outdoors during the hottest part of the day. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, A-News.
Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan have installed the first permanent markers along their shared border, advancing a landmark agreement aimed at ending decades of territorial disputes. Well, Seville Rajapova reports now from Tashkent.
Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan have started installing the first permanent border markers along the 1,008-kilometer shared frontier, beginning at the point where the borders of Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan and Uzbekistan meet. The move follows the March 2025 border treaty signed by Presidents Sadir Japarov and Emomali Rahmon, which formally settled one of Central Asia's longest running territorial disputes after more than 2 decades of negotiations. The agreement came after years of deadly border clashes, including violence in 2021 and 2022, that claimed thousands of lives and displaced thousands of residents. Since demarcation work began, joint survey teams have inspected more than 416 kilometers of the border and identified locations for nearly 2,000 boundary pillars. Officials from both countries jointly installed the first 4 permanent markers. Authorities claim completed demarcation will provide legal certainty for the border, improve security in frontier regions, and create new opportunities for cross-border trade, infrastructure development, and economic cooperation between the 2 neighboring countries. It is Seville Rajapova reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A-News.
Representatives from OPEC and countries participating in the Charter of Cooperation are meeting in Baku for the first technical committee session under the group's framework. A-News's Travis Richards has the details.
Representatives from OPEC member countries and countries participating in the Charter of Cooperation have gathered in Baku for the inaugural technical committee meeting, marking the first meeting of its kind under the framework. The Charter of Cooperation, signed in 2019, provides a voluntary platform for dialogue between participating oil-producing countries. It promotes long-term cooperation on issues including oil market stability, technology, innovation, and energy policy. Opening the meeting, Azerbaijan's Energy Minister Parviz Shabazov described the gathering as an important milestone in implementing the Charter. He said closer international cooperation is becoming increasingly important as the global energy market faces geopolitical tensions, economic transformation, and supply chain disruptions. According to OPEC, the Charter grew out of cooperation during the global oil market downturn between 2014 and 2016, when producers recognized the need for closer collaboration to address shared challenges. Technical experts from participating countries are expected to meet at least twice a year under the framework, with the OPEC Secretariat coordinating the committee's work. OPEC Secretary General Haitham Al-Qais is leading the organization's delegation. I'm Travis Richards in Baku for A News.
Okay, after the break, we'll have more top stories of the day. Don't go away. On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
A warm welcome back wherever you're watching Primetime. Ukraine and the European Union have officially signed a landmark defence partnership to launch joint military production. Well, at a high-profile ceremony in Kyiv, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen sealed the new drone deal, while President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed the pact coincides with Ukraine nearing unprecedented capabilities to produce Patriot interceptor missiles.
I'm delighted to launch, together with you, Volodymyr, a new EU-Ukraine defense industrial partnership. What we are signing today is our very own drone deal. So the point I'm making is that we need to combine our strength. Together we can work on joint production, on making all of the components of the system work.
For the first time, Ukraine is approaching the capability to produce missiles for Patriot and could become the third country in history to have this agreement and this privilege. And for the first time, Ukraine is building its own ballistics and deep strikes. And these are not just developments, but a real force that is already operating, which covers distances previously unreachable. 2,884 kilometers.
An Azerbaijani sea captain is missing after a Russian drone hit a merchant vessel near the Ukrainian port of Odessa. Well, Azerbaijan's foreign ministry said 11 Azerbaijani citizens, all believed to be crew members, were on board the Turkish-owned ship and were brought ashore safely. The attack came a day after another Russian strike on a cargo vessel in Odessa killed 2 people, marking the second consecutive attack on civilian shipping in the port. The destruction of cultural heritage in Karabakh has drawn international attention for years. However, questions remain in the absence of a comprehensive UNESCO mission, despite repeated calls and negotiations. Here's more.
What happens when heritage is destroyed, but the international inspectors never arrive? For years, Azerbaijan asked UNESCO to examine cultural sites damaged in territories then under Armenian control. No comprehensive mission was deployed. After the 2020 war, UNESCO proposed sending experts. That mission also stalled. Why did scrutiny fail before the war and again afterwards? According to Azerbaijani official figures, the scale of destruction was vast. Some sites were reduced to ruins, others were stripped of stone, inscriptions or artifacts. Azerbaijan says it repeatedly requested a UNESCO fact-finding mission. UNESCO maintained that access required agreement from the parties concerned. The result was clear. No inspectors, no complete inventory, no international assessment made at the time. Claims that Caucasian Albanian inscriptions were altered also remain disputed and unverified by UNESCO. After the 2020 war, UNESCO proposed an independent technical mission under the 1954 Hague Convention. Azerbaijan said it did not oppose inspection, but it sought agreement on the mission's terms of reference, its route and list of sites, the wording used to describe the territory. Baku objected to the title Mission to Karabakh and proposed Mission to the Karabakh region of Azerbaijan. UNESCO did not accept that wording. There were also disputes over which Christian and Muslim sites would be examined. Agreement never came. The mission stalled. The dispute soon moved beyond monuments. Azerbaijani officials and media reports alleged political influence over technical decisions, restrictions on cooperation with Baku, pressure against Azerbaijan inside UNESCO bodies. These are serious claims. They require documents, named sources, and a full response from UNESCO and the former officials concerned. What is already clear is that trust had broken down. The argument was no longer only about heritage. It was about who defined the mission, selected the sites, and shaped the record. UNESCO has acted in conflicts from Mali to Ukraine. Each case is different, but Karabakh still raises three questions. Did UNESCO use every available tool to gain access before 2020? Were the post-war terms broad enough to examine all damaged heritage? Why is there still no comprehensive assessment accepted by all sides? The monuments were damaged, the mission did not arrive, and without an agreed international record, heritage became another front in the conflict.
Cuba has been plunged into another nationwide blackout after its electricity grid failed for the third time in just 9 days. Well, the country's energy ministry says the power system suffered a complete shutdown on Tuesday, cutting electricity across the island of around 10 million people. Well, the island's worsening energy crisis is driven by an aging power network and ongoing fuel shortages. The crisis has worsened since the US imposed an oil blockade, cutting off Cuba's main source of fuel. Australia's government has unveiled new plans to regulate the use of artificial intelligence. A new Office of AI is to be established, setting standards on water and energy usage for data centres. Now, there will be also safeguards on copyright for books, music and artwork originating in Australia. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says the aim is to balance investment with AI with effective regulation and will support Australia's ambition to become a global hub for AI and data centres.
So it is only natural that up until now our response has been issue by issue, sector by sector. But just as government developed coordinated approaches for other significant technologies, from civil aviation in the 1920s to genetics in the 1990s, we must do this with AI as well. Effective today, I am establishing the Office of AI in my own department of the Prime Minister and Cabinet.
And finally tonight, with football fever ahead of tonight's World Cup semi-final already taking over, an international grassroots football academy is making their first appearance in Baku. Could we be seeing some of these players who were released from Premier League academies in Azerbaijan's football clubs next season? And what could this mean for the popularity of football right here? Katie Wilson has been to meet them.
When Belal Mustafzadeh scored that winning goal for Karabakh at the UEFA Champions League game against Frankfurt, we asked ourselves, what could the legacy of this record-breaking run for Karabakh mean for Azerbaijani football? Well, the answer could well be behind me now. Rising Stars Football Academy was founded in the UK and supports players from not only the UK but South America and Europe in finding contracts at international clubs. That could be in Europe, it could be in the UAE, and it could well be in Azerbaijan. Is today they're making their showcase debut here in Baku, where they potentially could see players from the academy getting signed at Premier League football clubs here in Azerbaijan. Now, we all know football is getting bigger in Azerbaijan, and we're seeing more international players be signed for the teams here, and this could well become part of that. And we're asking ourselves, what could this mean for Azerbaijani football? Within the region, we're seeing players such as Abdukhadir Kusanov from Uzbekistan make his debut at Manchester City and the World Cup, and Azerbaijan could well be next. Their sporting powerhouses in other sports such as contact sport and football may well be the next sport. Now, I've been speaking to the organisers from Rising Stars Football Academy about what they believe the future could hold for not only these players behind me, but for football in Azerbaijan.
Rising Stars was created in 2022 as a platform to give young, talented football players that have been released from professional football academies and players with the passion to become professional football players. We're here to create new opportunities for them, take them on trial at professional clubs and so on.
Being from Azerbaijan myself, I was born in Baku, but obviously I've been in the UK for 25 years now. I am definitely, most certainly can say, we will see Azerbaijani national players playing in the top leagues in Europe. I've realised that there's quality that is needed in this country and the quality which we have. So currently we've got a few players who are out on trial in the Azerbaijani Premier League and in the Azerbaijani First League as well, which is the equivalent to the Championship in the UK. Yeah, that's what we do basically. That's our main aim. Our main aim is to come and increase the quality of players in the Azerbaijani Football League.
Great country with great culture and very nice people. They're very welcoming. So far our stay has been great and it's been very welcoming. And I'm very hopeful that, yeah, something comes out of this.
Well, that brings us to the end of Prime Time for this evening. Please do join us tomorrow though for plenty more news and analysis. And from all of us here at A News, thanks for watching.